Fedora Linux 41 has been released. Fedora Linux 41 comes with some exciting updates and a better user interface that makes it easier to use. It features the new DNF5 package manager and the GNOME 47, which are really cool. The new DNF5 package is a fully featured package manager that does not require Python dependencies. So the Snapper plugin Python 3DNF plugin Snapper is no longer supported in Fedora 41. This plugin was in charge of generating pre and post snapshot whenever packages were installed with the previous DNF package manager. DNF5 introduces a new way to implement this function, the Actions plugin. Fedora 41 now ships with GNOME 47. GNOME 47 comes with a set of significant system enhancements. One of the biggest features is the accent colors. You can now choose from a wide range of vibrant colors. GNOME 47 also includes some great new features. Take a look at their website for more information. So in this video, I will show you how to install the all-new Fedora Workstation 41 with Snapshot and Rollback support. If you want to install Fedora on KDE or XFCE desktop, you can also watch this video. I will cover all three desktop environments. So if you mess up the system settings, install something that does not work, or run into problems after updating, you won't have to worry about breaking the system and spending hours trying to fix it. Simply restore the snapshot before the problematic change, and you're good to go. For this guide, I will use a hard disk with a capacity of 128 gigabytes. I will create a 600 megabyte EFI system partition and use the remaining disk space to create a partition for the Btrfs volume. The Fedora also creates a swap on ZRAM during boot, so no separate swap partition is required. I am not going to create a separate boot partition because I want the boot directory to be part of the system root. So when you undo changes between two snapshots or roll back a snapshot, the boot directory and system root are both rolled back. This eliminates kernel mismatches with the reverted system. Then on the Btrfs volume, I will create subvolumes for these directories. Some directories contain temporary files and caches. Others contain data that you do not want to lose if you roll back the system root. And some should be in read-write mode when booting into a read-only snapshot. So let's get started. Boot your system using the Fedora Workstation 41 installer. On the welcome screen, click the Install Fedora option. Select your language. I will go with English United States. Next, select your keyboard language and set the time and date. I will go with the defaults. Click the installation destination option. Choose the advanced radio button, then click the done button. Here, you will create the partitions, file systems, and Btrfs subvolumes needed to install Fedora Workstation 41. First, you need to create and mount the EFI partition. Click the plus button to create a partition. Set the partition size to 600 megabytes. The file system, take EFI system partition. I will label it as EFI. And the mount point to /boot/EFI. Press OK to create. Then you must create a Btrfs volume on which you can create all of the subvolumes needed to install Fedora Workstation 41. Select the free space and click on the plus button again. I will use all the remaining disk space. Set the file system to Btrfs and the mount point to / that is root. Next, you must create a home subvolume. So select the Btrfs volume and the plus button. Enter the name as home and mount point as /home. Click OK to finish. I will create the remaining subvolumes when the installation is finished. For now, click the Done button to complete the storage configuration. To finalize the changes, click the Accept Changes button. Then press the Begin Installation button to start the installation process. The installation is now complete. Click the Finish Installation button. Then restart the computer. The last phase of the installation process will start. Complete the remaining customization steps. You will then be logged into the Fedora Workstation 41 with the all-new GNOME 47 desktop interface. Open the terminal. Disable the Grub menu auto hide feature. The Grub menu has to be visible for you to be able to boot into a snapshot. Next, set the Btrfs volume label. This is optional, but I will set it anyway. Volume label has been set. Check your setup. Your setup should look something like this. Then check your subvolumes. As you can see, a home subvolume has been created as specified during the installation. The machine subvolume is created automatically by systemd when you install Fedora Workstation. Install some packages. You will need them later. Update your operating system. Update is complete. Finally, reboot your system. I will now proceed to create the remaining subvolumes. Create the directory var libvirt. Fedora Workstation creates it automatically when you install it. However, it will not be the case for other spins. Get the UUID of your Grub-Btrfs file system and store it in a bash variable. Get the Grub-Btrfs subvolume mount options from the etcfs tab file. Now you need to define subvolumes. Go to my webpage on the same subject. I will include a link to this page in the description. And I will create these subvolumes. If you are installing Fedora for KDE Desktop, replace GDM with SDDM. If you were installing Fedora for XFCE Desktop, replace GDM with LightDM and LightVM data. Fedora Workstation ships with the Firefox web browser by default. So I will create a subvolume for the Mozilla directory. So if you take a snapshot of your home directory and then undo the changes, you do not want to lose any new bookmarks, passwords, or other user data. If you install additional web browsers, you must create separate subvolumes for them as well. If you are installing Chrome web browser, add this line to the subvolumes array. If you are installing Brave web browser, then add this line to the subvolumes array. If you intend to install the Mozilla Thunderbird email client, add this line to the subvolumes array. If you use the GNU-PG encryption and signing tool, add this line to the subvolumes array. And if you use the SSH, add this line to the subvolumes array. In this tutorial, however, I will only create the Mozilla subvolume in the user's home directory. So copy the subvolumes array and its elements. Paste it into your terminal and press enter. Find the length of the longest element in the subvolumes array. In my case, it is 24. The length of this element. Go back to the web page. Copy this command from 4 to done. Paste it in the terminal and press enter. And this small script will create a subvolume for each element in the array. Change the ownership of the newly created directories in the user's home to your username. If you have created subvolumes for GPG and SSH, You must also change their permissions. Like this. But since I have not created the subvolumes, I will just cancel. Check your /etc/fs tab file. This is what it should look like. Reload fs tab to mount all the subvolumes. Check your subvolumes. Your setup should now look somewhat like this. Now that everything appears to be in order, you can delete the old directories. Copy from for to done. Paste it into the terminal and hit enter. All the old directories have now been removed. The next step is to install and configure Snapper. Fedora 41 now uses DNF5 as its default package manager, replacing DNF4. Unlike DNF4, the new DNF5 is a fully featured package manager that does not require Python dependencies. As a result, Fedora 41 no longer includes the Snapper plugin Python 3 DNF plugin Snapper. This plugin was in charge of creating pre- and post-snapshots whenever packages were installed using the DNF4 package manager. In DNF5, a new way to implement this function is introduced, the Actions plugin. The Actions plugin is more powerful than the previous Snapper plugin, as it can run external applications before or after transactions and interact with the DNF5 configuration. So install Snapper and the plugin packages. Create an actions file. I will create an actions file called snapper.actions. Go to my web page. Copy from sudo to eof. Paste it into the terminal and press enter. The Snapper actions file has been created. Create a new Snapper configuration named root for the Btrfs volume @ which is the root file system. Also create a new Snapper configuration named home for the Btrfs volume @ home. Verify that the Snapper configuration files have been created. And now allow regular user to use Snapper without requiring root privileges. To do so, add your username to the Snapper's root and home configurations to set a ACL. You should also add the newly created snapshot subvolumes in the fs tab file. reload the fscab file. And your subvolumes will now look like this. Disable the indexing of the .snapshots directories by update db. It is enabled by default, which can cause significant slowdown and excessive memory usage if you have a large number of snapshots. Next, enable snapshot booting. To enable snapshot booting, open the etc default grub configuration file and add this line. You must also specify the relative path option in the grub.cfg file located in the EFI system partition. Finally, update the grub.cfg file. The snapper configuration is now complete. List the snapshots for root file system. And for the home directory, at this point, you do not have any snapshots. We will create them later. The next step is to install and configure Grub-Btrfs. The Grub-Btrfs package adds Fedora Linux snapshots to the Grub menu and allows you to test a snapshot in read-only mode before rolling back to it in read-write mode. To install it, clone the Grub-Btrfs repository from GitHub. Change the directory to Grub-Btrfs. The setup is pre-configured to work with Arch and Gentoo Linux out of the box. You must make a few changes to the Grub-Btrfs config file to make it work with Fedora. Go to the web page, copy from sed to config, paste it into the terminal and press enter, and then install it. Update grub.cfg file. You will receive the no snapshots found error since you have not yet created any snapshots. But don't worry, it will function properly after you do. Enable the Grub-Btrfsd service. Your Grub-Btrfs installation is now complete. You may now delete the cloned Grub-Btrfs repository. Everything that needed to be installed and configured in Fedora has been completed. Now, you should take a subvolume snapshot of the main volume and make the subvolume the default root file system. This allows you to roll back without having to specify the snapshot number and the ambit when using the snapper tool. So first, create a directory named 1 in the .snapshots directory. Next, you should create an XML file. Go to my web page, copy from sudo to eof, paste it into the terminal, and press enter. Ensure that the date has been set correctly and is in the coordinated universal time format, which is UTC format. Now create a read-write subvolume snapshot of the system root in the .snapshot/1 directory. Get the subvolume ID of the newly created subvolume. For me, it is 271. It could be different for you depending on the number of subvolumes you have created. Using this subvolume ID, set the newly created snapshot subvolume as the default subvolume for the system root. Confirm that the subvolume is set as the default system root. Now reboot. As you can see, there is still no snapshots submenu in the grub. That is because, as I mentioned earlier, we have not created a snapshot yet. When we do, it will be generated automatically. Now check the snapshots in Snapper. As you can see, Snapper now displays the subvolume snapshot in the .snapshot/1 directory as snapshot number 1. The installation of Fedora 41 with Snapshot and Rollback support is now complete. You can now start taking snapshots. I ran some tests to determine the capabilities of the Snapper tool, as well as to demonstrate how to use it. I will add a link to this YouTube video in the description. If you are trying this out in a virtual machine, I highly recommend running these tests and any other scenarios you think of where you might want to explore different ways to destroy and recover. Although these tests were performed on Fedora 40, they are also applicable to Fedora 41. There are no changes in Fedora 41. You can also enable automatic timeline snapshots. When the timeline is enabled, a snapshot is created once every hour. Once per day, the timeline cleanup algorithm cleans up the snapshots. Automatic timeline snapshots are enabled by default in both root and home configurations. Enable it only for the system root and disable it for the home. Enable the Snapper timeline timer. And then enable the Snapper cleanup timer. That is all. Every hour starting now, a single snapshot will be created and cleaned up every other day. As you can see, 2 single timeline snapshots have been created automatically for each hour. These will be deleted every other day automatically. If you reboot your system and look at the Grub menu, you will notice the snapshot links here as well. From here, you can easily boot into a snapshot. You will boot into a read-only snapshot. You can then easily roll back to that snapshot with read and write permission. And if you want to know how to create snapshots manually or create pre-post snapshots automatically every time you install a package, as I mentioned earlier, please look at my other video on how to use the snapper tool. Well, that's it. This concludes the video on how to install Fedora 41 with Snapshot and Rollback support. And thank you for watching until the very end. I hope you found it helpful. See you in the next video. Take care and goodbye.